Hey there, it's John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to part 5 of our 6-part Amonkhet full set review. Today we're going to look at all of the green cards. Now, if you've been watching the series, you know we've looked at the other 4 colors of the color pie, and we do have a playlist on the channel if you'd like to catch up. Tomorrow we're going to wrap things up with the rest of the set and finish the set review. Hopefully get you prepared for that pre-release. Now, quickly before we get started, a quick reminder, if you check out the description below, you'll find a couple ways to help support the channel, one of which is the Amazon affiliate store. If you make any purchases of Magic or really any products through the links provided through the storefront, a small percentage will come back to help support the channel. It really goes a long way. Secondly, we have our Patreon page. We're actually really close to our next Patreon goal, which I'm excited about, so check that out if you get a chance. And having said that, let's get into the set review. Now, if you've watched the other installments, you kind of know what to expect here. We're going to look at each card individually, first off with a limited focus. So we're going to talk about its potential in draft and sealed decks. Secondly, if it applies to other places, many times some of these cards will apply to standard especially, but even if it's commander or modern, I will certainly try to make mention of that when it's applicable. Now, let's get into the cards, starting off with Banefaction of RO Nose. I like this card for its ability to populate my graveyard more than anything. I mean, trading this for the best creature or enchantment in the top 5 cards of my library could be fine, but it's a little high variance at times. Now, in a limited deck, hopefully you're going to at least hit a creature, or you should if your build is pretty consistent with most green, or at least partially green limited decks. But at the same time, you're really going to unlock the value of this card if you have some Graveyard Matters cards for your deck. So whether that's draft or sealed, if you have some Aftermath cards, for example, or Embalm cards, you're going to find some more value because then this actually could potentially become card advantage for you as opposed to just trading this for something else of good quality. As far as standard goes, this might see some standard play. I don't know if a Delirium deck might want something like this, or if they're actually fine the way they are, but I wouldn't mind testing it in a Delirium build, if nothing else. Bitterblade Warrior. This is a fine 2-drop, like nothing too exciting here. It's a common, you can pick this up late in a pack and draft, and it could be fine for you. I'm okay playing Bears with Upside like this, a 2-2 for 2, and I can simply, at times, exert it to become a 3-2 Death Toucher when it attacks. I don't like the fact that it's not a Death Toucher as a defender, because I feel like that's one of the key pieces of Death Touch, is it is a deterrent for your opponent attacking in, and it kind of slows down the game a little bit, lets you ramp into your big stuff in green, and this card's not going to do that for you. So it's not always going to make your cut, but it's playable. I mean, it can be just fine if you need a 2-drop. Cartouche of Strength. This is actually one of the better cartouches because in itself it's basically a removal card. Now it's a fight removal, so yes, it's a little conditional, but when it comes to green, that's usually the options you have for destruction spells. It's either fight or a combat trick or something like that. Green doesn't have a lot of opportunities to just flatly take out a creature, so this is going to be just fine for green at 3. And on top of that, potentially, as long as you don't get 2 for 1, you give something +1/+1 in trample, which could be good in certain circumstances as well. But maybe most importantly, it interacts with those trials. Now, the green trial, we'll look at it a little later. It's okay. It's maybe not as good as some of the other ones, but especially if you're in red or perhaps black and you're running some of those trials, another cartouche, especially one that also is a removal spell, could be really good for you. Champion of Ronis. This card I find really intriguing. It's kind of like Elvish Piper in some ways, which could be very powerful. Now, a couple things I want to point out about the card. You're actually putting the card from your hand into play. You're not casting the card. So if you're trying to put down, say, an Eldrazi Titan in Standard or something like that, you're not going to get that cast effect from it. But still, sometimes, who cares? You're still getting a big old creature with good abilities, right? So where does this card fit in? Let's talk about limited first. I think this is a good pick, like high in a pack and draft. I feel like this could be first pickable, or at least in the top few picks. Now, the only thing that's a little awkward about this in the world of limited is, yes, it could bring some economy to you a little bit by letting you put down some bigger creatures a little earlier, but you might not always have like that amazing target, like an Eldrazi Titan, like you'd have in Standard, right? So if you don't have that incredible target, this card loses a little bit of its value, but at the end of the day, it's still a 3/3 for 4, so that is on par for paying for a 4 casting cost creature, and you get the ability on top of it, so I do feel like that's still a very good limited card any way you cut it. Now, another way to look at this too is it can be a tad slow because you do have to kind of untap with this, or give it haste, I guess, and attack in and exert it to get the ability. Now, the positive side of that, though, is even if that doesn't work out for you, this is going to be a lightning rod for removal. Your opponent's going to be more afraid of what you could have than perhaps what you actually have, and they're going to try to get rid of this card. And where that could be awkward for them is it could just line you up to have a couple good 5-drops in your hand that could just simply be cast over the next couple turns, and they use the removal on this 3/3. That could actually be really good for you. So this is definitely one to watch. I'm anxious to see what people come up with for standard with this, if they can tie this in with maybe some Eldrazi's or just some crazy creatures. It's going to be a tad slow for standard because of the way this card is actually formatted. But as long as it's not the main win condition, I could see this being like a plan B or a sub-win condition for some sort of other deck out there. Next we have Chandler Initiate. This is the first of a series of cards that is going to put -1/-1 counters on something you control. Now this one in particular also kind of doubles as a way to fix your mana, and that's actually kind of awesome. It's ramp/color fixing for 2 mana, and it is a little limited because of the fact that if it runs out of counters, then it can't do it anymore, but at the same time, as it runs out of counters, it gets larger, which is kind of nice because then it becomes maybe a more relevant creature. You should have your lands hopefully start to fall into place once you get to the mid-game, so that might not be important anymore. Another way you could use this card is you just play like some sort of 1-drop that's inconsequential, and then you just dump the -1/-1 counters on that 1-drop, and you have yourself a 3/4 on turn 2. It's a nice little beater also. So there's a couple ways you can look at this card. Obviously, the evaluation of this card goes up if you're looking to maybe go a 3rd color, or if you're splashing or something like that, or maybe you have a lot of double color requirement cards in your deck. Then this becomes almost a must-play in a case like that. It is rare. You won't see this all the time. There is actually some good ramping and color fixing in green other than this card that we will look at. Velocipede. Nothing much to say about this one. It's just a big dumb insect. 5/5 for 5. You're not going to play this all the time, but if you need a 5-drop and just something that's going to give you a little board presence, it's going to be just fine for you. You can get this late in a draft. Crocodile of the Crossing. Here's another one of these -1/-1 cards, but I do want to point out that this one, even if you're pigeonholed into putting the -1/-1 on this particular creature, then it's coming into play as a 4/3 for 4 with haste. Economically, that's still a good card. If you can dump this -1/-1 counter on something else on the board, even better. 5/4 haster for 4. Yeah, there's a lot of economy here. This is another card that you could pick pretty highly, I think, and be happy with it. Maybe not always a first pick, but maybe within the first few in a pack and draft. Next we have Defiant Greatmaw, and this is another one of these -1/-1 counter cards. This time around, though, if you do decide to put the counters on this creature, it allows you to take some of the counters off other creatures. So it's an interesting tug-of-war. If you're playing a lot of these type of cards, this might be a good utility card. Again, on its own, though, a 4/5 on turn 3 could potentially be great for you. If it's a 2/3 on turn 3, that's not horrible either. Again, it's still on curve with what you would expect from green. But if you have like a 2/2 on turn 2 that's inconsequential for you, you can dump those counters on that, let it die, and then you have a 4/5 beater on turn 3. That could be good as well. I mean, think of it this way. Would you play a card that said green and 2, 4/5, when you cast this card, sacrifice a creature? Yeah, you probably would, right? So this could potentially be a good card for you. Not necessarily first pick or anything like that, but a high pick. Dissenter's Deliverance. Yes, it's another Artifact Hose card, and we've seen a whole bunch of these in the set. Nothing unusual here. I mean, this is pretty typical. They're trying to shut down some of the Kaladesh strategies so that these Amonkhet cards will have their day in the sun, and this is just going to help you get there, basically. The upside is you have cycling, so when you don't have a target for this particular card, then you're able to at least cycle it away for something else. That's kind of nice. As far as limited goes, there's not a lot of amazing artifacts out there, so this is definitely a sideboard card for you. And if you board it in and your opponent can't hit that artifact that's problematic, then wonderful. If you're ahead in the game, you can cycle this and try to keep the pressure on. Aside from that, this could see some play out of sideboards in Standard to deal with some artifacts, but I have a feeling that artifact strategies are going to start going away relatively quickly in the new meta. There's just too many hose cards out there. Exemplar of Strength. This is an okay 2-drop. If you have a 1-drop, this becomes an amazing 2-drop. So if you have some random 1-drop that you can dump these counters on, you got yourself a 4/4 on turn 2, you're attacking in with a 4/4 on turn 3. Yeah, that's actually pretty awesome. Now, the downside is if you don't have something to target with this, you put the counters on this card, it becomes a 1/1. Now, it does attack in as a 2/2, because when it attacks, it will lose one of the counters, and you'll also gain a life. But at that point, your opponent could potentially just go ahead and block it, and they probably would, because they know it could get bigger. I mean, next turn it will attack in as a 3/3, right? They'll probably block it with their 2/2, and you're not going to get a whole lot of utility out of it. It's an okay card. It's definitely runnable, but it's a better card if you have a lot of random 1-drops in your deck. Giant Spider, one of the original cards from Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited, obviously a reprint. And if I'm not mistaken, other than basic lands, I believe this is the card that has been reprinted the most in the history of Magic, I believe. And it's a good one for Limited. I mean, it's a common. You can get this maybe middle of the pack, and it will be good for you. It's great against small flyers. You'll be happy to play this. Sometimes it can even rumble in. All in all, it's a decent card. Gift of Paradise. Now, recently we've been getting these enchantment auras for lands that fix your color but don't necessarily ramp you. This one does ramp you. Also gains you a little life too on top of it. But I like the fact that I can fix colors. I can ramp with this for 3 mana. I'm pretty happy to run one of these in a lot of builds in Limited. Greater Sandworm. It costs 7 for a 7/7. What I like about this card, though, is 2 things. First off, it can be chump blocked by just small creatures like warrior tokens or something like that. Secondly, it makes it harder for your opponent to put together a good joint block of a bunch of cheap creatures because anything power 2 or less can't touch it. And it has cycling, so if I stumble on lands, I can cycle it away. I'm happy running one of these in my Limited deck at the top of the curve, perhaps. It doesn't have evasion or anything, but I do think that the evasion, quote-unquote, for small creatures might be good enough to make this actually playable and Limited, and you'll be happy with it. And the cycling is a nice insurance policy as well. Not something you have to pick highly. You can probably get this a little bit later in a pack and draft, but definitely worth running, I think. Patras Mark. This is one of the cards we're going to see today that actually helps remove those -1/-1 counters from your creatures. There's a few of them. This one's uncommon, but I'm probably playing this more as a anti-removal card than anything else for 1 mana at instant speed. It protects your best thing against a removal spell, basically. It's cheap. I'm happy to run one of these in a deck. I'm probably not doing more than that, but a one-of could be good. Harvest Season. Here's a potential ramp/color fixing card as well. Now, it's contingent upon board state, though, so you do want to take that into account. It's going to be based on how many tapped creatures you have. But in a typical Limited game, I think at any given time, you can probably work things to make sure you get at least 2 creatures tapped, for example. And if you can do that, paying 3 for 2 basic lands, that's not bad, actually. That's actually very economical. Even for 1, that's decent. When you're trying to fix color, you'll be really happy to do it. So again, it's not necessary for every build, but if you're really interested in ramping and or fixing your color, maybe you're going into a 3rd, then this is definitely going to be a good card for you in those circumstances. I do think it's a little too conditional for Standard, however, due to the fact that it's checking the board state. Sometimes that can be awkward in the Standard environment. Haze of Pollen. Well, this is a fog with cycling, and typically when it comes to fogs, I don't want one necessarily. I don't really love them in Limited, but once in a while, if the draft is going my way and I see a lot of these coming by and I have a good creature base, I might think about doing a Turbo Fog style deck, and I have had success with that in the past. So for me, I don't want 1 fog, but if I go this direction, I kind of want 2 or 3 in my deck, if that makes sense. So the extra bonus to this one is if you don't need the fog, you can cycle it away for something else, and that can be important at times too, especially if you're already ahead and you don't have to worry about your defense at all. You just want to keep putting pressure on. So it's fine in those circumstances, I think. A lot of times you'll pass this and really not think twice about it. It's not going to be for all builds, definitely. Honored Hydra. Now, this card excels if you can pitch it early and then play the embalm cost of 4 and get yourself a 6/6 trampler on turn 4, attacking on turn 5. That's going to be a good day for you. That's what you really want to do with this card. It's not always going to be possible, but if you have some discard outlets, typically they're going to be in other colors than green. But if you can find one in a draft or something like that, pick it up. It might be a cute thing you can do. But you know what? This is still playable, even if you just play it for 6 as a 6/6 trampler. I also like the fact that it's a green and 5. They could have easily made this 2 green and 4, and they didn't. That was good. And if your opponent does deal with it eventually, guess what? you can do it all over again and pay 4 to get this back as a embalm version. Very, very good card. High pick in draft. This could even be a first pick in a lot of packs. Hooded Brawler. This is a fine limited card. Again, if you're looking for something to buff out your 3 spot, I think this will be good. It's a 3/2 for 3. I'm happy with that. And oh, by the way, every once in a while I can exert it to give it +2/+2, attacking as a 5/4. Really decent 3-drop. Initiate's Companion. I like these 3/1 2 casting cost cards because a lot of times they just simply trade up. And that's usually what's going to happen. Sometimes you can sneak a little damage in early, and that's kind of nice. I have lost to cards like that before if my deck has started off slow or I stumbled on mana or something like that. However, most of the time, you're going to be happy to trade this 2 casting cost with a 3 casting cost, maybe even a 4 casting cost creature. Just puts you ahead a little bit. As far as the ability goes, if you can get some damage across, it's actually a great ability in green because it can ramp you by untapping a land, or it can mitigate an exert cost. Now, the only downside here is it might be hard, honestly, especially as the game goes on, for this card to get in damage on a player. So you do have to take that into account. But I'm still going to run this just simply because it trades up really well. Manglehorn. All right. Got some more artifact hosing going on here. As far as limited goes, like I said earlier, there's not a whole ton of amazing artifacts. If your opponent plays something problematic, side it in. If not, I won't even bother touching this card because it's just not economical on its own. A 2/2 for 3 isn't where you want to be, right? But it does have its utility. As far as standard goes, again, maybe this starts off early in the meta in some standard sideboards just to protect against smarter vehicles or that type of thing. But I do feel like the standard environment's going to shift very dramatically away from artifacts really quick. Mouth to Feed. This is actually a fine limited card too. Again, I don't know if I'm first picking this or anything like that necessarily, but it could be a high pick. I mean, 3 casting costs for a 3/3. That's on par. That's fine. Granted, take into account that tokens can sometimes be a little more fragile than an actual card, but I think that more than compensates due to the fact that you have the feed side attached to the card as well. And yes, you do have to play it from your graveyard, but potentially in green, if you have a couple big creatures, hopefully you still have that hippo, you can not only replace this particular card itself, but also draw maybe an additional card or 2. That's good enough for me. I think I'd be happy playing that in a lot of limited decks. Card draw is a big deal, and if you can find some green card draw, even if it's a conditional card draw spell, I don't mind taking up a spot with a copy of this card. Naga Vitalist. Well, here's another card that's going to help you ramp a little bit. It's a 2-drop mana dork. A little more defensive than some of the old 1-drops, being a 1/2. Yes, I miss the 1-drop mana dorks, but we don't have them. We got this. So this is definitely very playable for some ramp in limited. Olara Cultivator. I actually like this card a lot with these -1/-1 cards because it's a 1-drop, 0/3, and some of the time you're just going to simply let it die so that you can throw the -1/-1 counters on it and you can get another very large creature. This is a common. You might be able to pick these up, at least with some frequency in a draft. And if you don't have that game plan going, it will also help you ramp a little bit and fix your colors by paying 3 to sacrifice it to grab a basic land card. It comes into play tapped, but it's going to help you grow faster. And again, if you're in a 3rd color, that could be very beneficial to you. So maybe not necessarily for every build in limited, but if you're going down those 2 routes specifically, or especially if you're going down maybe both of those 2 routes, this card becomes a lot better for you. Ornery Cutter, and this is another one of those -1/-1 cards. If you can get yourself a 3/4 for 3, that's real good, but even if you get yourself a 2/3 for 3, it's still kind of on par for 3 casting costs. It's not a bad card. So again, this is just kind of a curve filler, basically. If you need a 3-drop, this is a fine one. Pouncing Cheetah. Not a lot to say about this one either. This is another good curve filler. A 3/2 flash can surprise your opponent sometimes, only costs 3. You'll be happy to run these if you need them. Prowling Serpapard. This card is kind of crazy to me. Okay, first off, 3 casting costs 4/3. Stop right there. I'm happy with this card. I know it's 2 on color, but I'm okay. I can get past that because there's a chance that I'm running a 4/3 on turn 3. Hyper economical. I love that. Oh, and by the way, it can't be countered. And creature spells you control can't be countered when this is in play. That becomes crazy. So Limited, I think this is first pickable. I think the raw power level's there, and it's also protection. Not that you're going to run into tons of counter magic in limited necessarily, but when you do run into that opponent that is using counter magic in lieu of some removal because that's what they drafted, or perhaps that's what they opened in their sealed pool, then you're going to be really happy you have this card. Phenomenal. This could shut down your opponent's ability in a case like that to actually remove your stuff. Becomes really, really strong for you. In Standard, I do think this will see Standard play. Again, the raw power is there due to its casting cost of 3 and 4/3 power toughness, but also, again, it protects against counter magic. I even think this card could see some modern play, perhaps reviving some of the old zoo formats a little bit, because it does protect against that counter magic, and it protects everything, especially in multiples. This card becomes very, very formidable. So this is definitely one to watch, not to mention Commander too. You do run into a lot of crazy counter magic in Commander. It's another way to protect creature-centric decks from that. Quarry Hauler. Here's another way to perhaps remove a -1/-1 counter, or maybe just add a counter to something of yours, like a Planeswalker, for example, or maybe grow a -1/-1 counter on your opponent's stuff. So there's a lot of versatility here, and economically, a 4/3 for 4 is just fine, even if you can't find a good target for the ability. Ronis the Indomitable. Okay, here's the green god, and I said this about all the gods, and let's round it out. I'll say it about all 5. Would I play this if it's a green and 2, and it wasn't even a creature, it was like an enchantment, and it said, pay a green and 2, another target creature gets +2/+7, gains trample till end of turn? In a lot of decks, I probably would. Maybe not all builds, but if I have some big creatures and they don't have evasion, that ability actually becomes very, very strong. And you do see that a lot in green, especially in limited. Now, let's talk about the creature itself. I don't mind its ability to turn on when you have another creature power 4 or greater, because I don't think that's too difficult to do. It could tie up your mana a little bit in the early game. Let's say you play a 2-drop 2/2 on turn 2. Turn 3, you play this card. You can actually start turning this on as a blocker the next turn or as an attacker. One of the options you could do is just go ahead and pay the 3, make that 2/2 a 4/2 trampler, attack with that and attack with a god, and you're coming in with a lot of power toughness very early in the game. Your opponent might have to chump block. It might put them back on resources. It can be really good if it works out for you that way. One thing that's awkward about this design, I think, is the fact that they're putting Death Touch on a 5/5. It's almost kind of like they thought, in general, the cards seemed to start to feel too good, and they wanted to put a mechanic on it. So, well, let's throw Death Touch on it. It just seems awkward that it's on a creature that's basically killing most things it's touching anyway. So, I don't know. It is what it is. But aside from that, the card's still very, very good. Very high pickable, easily first pick for you in a draft. Great if you're lucky enough to open this in sealed too. I think the raw power level is here for Standard as well. I'm not exactly sure what the deck looks like, but obviously something that's creature-centric, perhaps a Stompy deck in Gruul or something like that. I could see perhaps at some point in the meta that becoming a thing, just due to the fact that this card simply exists. Sandworm Convergence. First and foremost, this card feels like a commander card to me. At 8 casting costs, it's actually doing a lot. But even in limited, 8 starts to feel a little tough to pull off every once in a while. Like, 7 can be difficult but doable. 6 is definitely fine. But when you're talking about 8 being the top of your curve, you're starting to take a little bit of a risk. If you have some good ramp to back it up, and we've seen some good ramp cards, then maybe I'm going to play it, but it's definitely not for all builds. If I can get this thing into play, I mean, it is great. Creatures with flying can't attack you or your planeswalkers. And at the end step, you get a 5/5 worm token. So you do get that worm token at the end of that first turn you play it. If you got it on your upkeep, for example, I would really be cold on this card because you're waiting a full turn cycle before you get any benefit, and you paid 8 mana. That would have been unacceptable. But since you get it at the end of the turn, you can use it as a blocker if nothing else. It won't necessarily mean you're going to catch up from a deficit if you're really in the hole late in the game, but at the same time, it can start to swing a game and stabilize you too. So it can be good if you got the ramp to back it up. It's definitely not a high pick. I want to pick the ramp up first. And if I have some good ramp, then I don't mind picking it up maybe in pack 3 or something like that and trying it out. But again, this really feels like a decent commander card more than anything. Scaled Behemoth. I love hexproof creatures. Like, I'm happy to play a 6-drop hexproof. Even if the stats were smaller on this, I would still be pleased with it. A 6/7 is sizable. I mean, it doesn't have evasion, so that's a little tricky, especially if your opponent has a lot of tokens or something like that. But you know what? I'm going to risk it. 6 mana for a hexproof creature. It's really, really hard to deal with, and I'll be happy to play one of these at the top of my curve in limited. Shed Weakness, another decent combat trick. You do have to remember sometimes combat tricks basically are removal for green. So if you don't have that removal, or maybe enough of it in the other color you're playing or something like that, sometimes you do have to rely a little more heavy on these combat tricks. But even so, a one of something like this could be fine in the deck and could surprise your opponent. Also, in a pinch, it does remove -1/-1 counters if you're in that market. Shifet Monitor. As a creature, I'm not high on this card. I don't really want to pay 6 for a 6/5. I feel like it should have been a 6/6. But the reason you take the bump down in toughness is because of its other ability. You can cycle this away for 4, and also, aside from replacing it, you're able to search for a basic land or a desert card. It enters the battlefield untapped, and that's worthy to note too. So this is a great way to ramp or color fix, or if you really want to pull a desert out of your deck. They're not all super amazing. We'll look at them tomorrow, but sometimes they could come in handy. So there's a lot of utility here, and I love the fact that land doesn't come into play tapped. Just because of that, if I'm in a third color, I'm concerned about maybe ramping into something big, I'll be happy to run one of these. Sixth Sense. This card is kind of a take of Keen Sense from Planar Chaos, which was a take on Curiosity originally from Blue, and logistically it's a tad different in the wording, but basically does the same thing. The risk with a card like this is you could get 2 for 1, and that's not going to feel good. The other risk is there are going to be times where maybe you put this on a creature, you attack in, it replaces itself, and then your opponent plays a blocker, and it never really can get in for combat damage on a player anymore. And that gets awkward, because then you just basically did a really slow cycle, if nothing else. So, it's not something I'm crazy about, I'll be honest with you. But every once in a while, a card like this does overperform. And it only costs 1. So it's not a huge, huge risk to necessarily take on this. If you're looking for like your 23rd playable and you don't find anything better in your pool at that point, this is definitely fine for you. But I want to go all in on this type of mechanic. Spidery Grasp. This is a reprint from the original Innistrad, actually, and it's another good combat trick that can actually kind of double as green removal at times, can deal with flying, which is good. It basically takes your creature and staples a giant spider to them, so it's decent. It actually gets better if you're running some Exert cards, because aside from the combat trick itself, it actually can mitigate the occasional Exert cost, which is pretty good. Stinging Shots. Here's another way for green to deal with some flying creatures. There's typically at least one card like this that you find in most sets. And it's cheap. It will take care of a flyer. Very, very runnable. Sometimes this comes out of the sideboard once you know there are some formidable flyers that you might have to deal with. But what's nice is, even if you decide to main deck this, cycling helps mitigate the risk. Synchronized Strike. Well, here you go again. It's another one of these combat tricks that could work as removal for you. If you need it, it's there for you. Not too much more to say about it. Except, again, this is another card that could potentially mitigate some exert costs. So that's pretty good and a little better in some builds than others. Trial of Strength. Well, here's the green trial. Like I said, it's not as exciting as maybe some of the others. I really like the black one. I really like the red one quite a bit, because those are attacking your opponent's board state, basically. This one, though, is still a card that's going to trade up, if nothing else. I mean, if you play this for 3, get a 4/2, that could potentially trade with a 4 casting cost or even a 5 casting cost creature at times. That's not bad. It's definitely playable. And if you have a cartouche, and like I said, the green cartouche may be one of the better ones, if you have one of those or even 2 of those in your deck to back this up, this becomes a little bit better. So again, I'm probably not first picking this, but if I feel confident that I'm going to be able to pick up a couple of green cartouches, this becomes pretty good. Vizier of the Menagerie. This is a mythic. I really like this card. I mean, a 3/4 for 4, so it's got good stats to begin with. You can look at the top card of your library. I love that, because we've seen cards similar to this in the past that you just play with the top card revealed. Your opponent gets that information too. Now it's truly like there's an extra card in your hand. You can kind of bluff with that, because you can cast that top card, as long as it's a creature, as if it was in your hand. That's awesome. And you can actually go off a little bit with a lot of cheap creatures. Like if you have a lot of 1 and 2 drops come up on the top of your deck and you get lucky, you can fire off a couple of them at once. That's kind of awesome. And, oh, by the way, it also fixes your colors because you can cast creature spells as if it's mana of any color. This card does so much for 4. I love it. This was definitely going to see standard play. The power level is certainly there for this card. This is an amazing commander card because you go deep with colors in Commander, and sometimes even casting your Commander could be a chore if you stumble. This really helps you make sure you can consistently do that if you're able to get this card out. Fantastic card, and great for you in Limited too. Again, just the card advantage aspect of it is going to make it extremely limited playable, and easily a first pick in Draft, quite honestly. Watchful Naga. I'm not super high on this one. I don't like the downsize of a 2/2 for 3. Now, maybe on turn 4 I can attack in with this, exert, and have it replace itself. My opponent will probably trade because they don't want me getting a lot of card advantage and letting me do this multiple times over the course of the game. So, okay, for 3 mana, I got rid of some small creature that my opponent had, and I cycled this, basically. It's okay, but it's just not super interesting. You may have better things you could do at the 3 spot. Alright, having said that, those are the cards for today. We're going to be back to wrap everything up tomorrow with the rest of the set. And like I said with the other videos too, keep in mind that these are just my opinions of these cards. And truly, think about the cards that you enjoy playing when you go into your pre-release this coming weekend. It's all about having fun. I mean, don't try to cobble together some deck because certain cards I said were good. Play the cards, play the mechanics that you're comfortable with. You'll most likely do better if you're comfortable with the cards that you're playing and you've had experience maybe with this type of cards before in the past. That can go a really long way. So take these for what they're worth. I mean, at some point, I'm sure I'll make a mistake. I'm looking at a lot of cards very quickly. I'm sure sometime before this review is over, I will read something wrong or misinterpret it. But really, it's about helping you form your own opinions on these cards more than anything. So until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.